this Sunday the Texans travel to Denver to take on the Broncos. And yeah, before we get into these matchups, something that I really have to say is a lot of fans just like to look at the records and say, well, this team has a 5-3 record, this team has a 3-5 record. The team with the better record is going to win. But that's not how it works in the NFL. The NFL is all about matchups. But before we get into those matchups, I think it's important for me to talk about Denver. Denver has the best home field advantage in the league. And I'm being serious when I say this. It's not because of the crowd, even though the crowd is pretty crazy and loud, but it's due to the fact that Denver is a whole mile above sea level, comes the term Mile High City. So the altitude is higher, so the players get tired faster. That's not an issue for the Denver players because, obviously they play there, they're used to it. But to the Texans, it's going to be rough, man. It's going to be real rough. That's why the Broncos have the best home field advantage. Even though the fans are loud, that's not why it is. It's because of that high altitude where the players, get tired too quick, man. And it's probably going to happen to the Texans too. It happens to every team. It's just whether the Texans can overcome that. Hopefully they can, but, let's get into these matchups. Let's start off with the Broncos run offense versus the Texans run defense. The Broncos average 133 yards per game on the ground, which is 7th in the league, and the Texans allow 95 yards per game on the ground, which is also 7th in the league. So the Broncos are really good at running the ball, especially with their new running back, Lindsley. I think he was undrafted, but he's been doing really good for them. He's a really good running back. So the Texans are really going to have their hands full when it comes to stopping this Denver running game. Now, the way I see this playing out, honestly, I think the Broncos are going to find a lot of success running the ball against the Texans. If you guys saw, the Thursday night game against the Dolphins, they were doing a pretty good job running the ball on us, easy 5-6 yard gains, 4 yard gains sometimes. For the most part, they were running the ball well on us. The only reason, we won that game was because Brock Osweiler couldn't throw a football, and they couldn't stop Deshaun Watson. That's the only reason we ended up winning that game. Now the Broncos have a way better run game than them, and then put into consideration, Zach Cunningham is most likely out for this game. So it's going to make it even tougher because now all you have is Bernardrick McKinney, the guy that, stops the run downhill. You're missing Zach Cunningham, the guy that can play sideline to sideline and stop the run all over the place. So that's really going to hurt our team, not having Zach. Hopefully Kareem Jackson and Tyrann Mathieu, Justin Reed, they're able to perform at a higher level that they've already been playing at to really make up for the lack of Zach Cunningham, because I do feel like not having Cunningham for those games is going to be a huge blow for us. But now let's move on to the Broncos passing attack versus the Texans pass defense. The Broncos average 247 yards per game through the air. The Texans allow an average of 239 yards per game through the air, which is 12th in the league. Now, if you guys watched last Thursday Night Football game, Devontae Parker tore up the Texans. He got a few lucky receptions, but for the most part, I feel like the Dolphins were doing a good job on the Texans. Yeah, I don't like this matchup at all going into the game. I didn't like it going into the season, honestly. Yes, the Broncos traded away Demaryius Thomas to the Texans, but they still got Emmanuel Sanders and they got Courtland Sutton, a rookie they feel really good in. Keep in mind, this Texans secondary, or these Texans corners, are suspect. They do allow big plays here and there. But now, take that and take away their top corner, Jonathan Joseph. Jonathan Joseph is not going to play this game. So, what now? I honestly feel like the Broncos are going to move the ball up and down the field all day on this Texans defense. Because, 1, they're injured. 2, last week wasn't exactly a good showing against Brock Osweiler, and I think Case Keenum is a better quarterback than Brock Osweiler. So, I am very worried about how our corners will hold up against their really talented wide receivers. Hopefully, Kareem Jackson, Tyrann Mathieu, and I guess Sharice Wright can hold it down for the Texans defense. Now, let's talk about the Broncos pass protection versus the Texans pass rush. The Broncos have allowed 22 sacks. The Texans have gotten 21 sacks. Now, I haven't really watched many Broncos games this season, but if Case Keenum is playing like anything he played like here in Houston, Case Keenum is probably the reason why they've allowed 22 sacks. Because if you guys remember, Case Keenum has a tendency of holding onto the ball too long, and he starts running backwards and then gets sacked for like 12, 15 yards. And I'm not even over-exaggerating. Case Keenum legit did that so many times with the Texans. So if it's anything like that, I could see why the Broncos have allowed 22 sacks. I think their offensive line has improved over the years. And I think Case Keenum is probably the reason why they've allowed all these sacks. And anyways, the way I see this playing out is I still see JJ and Clowney kind of making life difficult for Case Keenum. But enough about that. Let's move on to the Texans offense versus the Broncos defense. Starting off with the Texans rushing attack versus the Broncos run defense, Texans average 123 yards per game, which is 11th in the NFL, and the Broncos allow 135 yards per game, which is 27th in the league. So the Texans these past 2 weeks, they've really gotten their run game going. Lamar Miller and Alfred Blue have been playing way better these past 2 weeks, and now they play one of the worst run defenses in the NFL. The way I see this matchup playing out is I straight up can see Lamar Miller and Alfred Blue having another great game against this pretty bad Broncos rush defense. Now, when you move on to the pass defense versus the Texans passing offense, the Texans average 256 yards per game through the air, which is 18th in the league, and the Broncos allow 237 yards per game, which is 11th in the league. So their pass defense is better than their run defense. But regardless, I think DeAndre Hopkins, the newly acquired Demaryius Thomas, who I do think will play, I'd say a decent amount, because I don't think he'll play the whole game, because obviously he has to learn the system and all that stuff. And Kiki, Jordan Thomas, I feel like they'll be able to move the ball downfield pretty easily because of Deshaun Watson. He's been able to move the ball downfield with ease against pretty much anyone so far this season. So I think the Texans easily march down the field on the Broncos as well. Now, the Texans pass protection versus the Broncos pass rush. I am terrified of this. Yes, I know the Texans these past 2 weeks have only allowed 1 sack, and they've been playing really well as of late, the offensive line. But when you talk about Von Miller and Bradley Chubb, this is a different animal, man. Like, yes, the Cowboys' defensive front is talented. Yes, DeMarcus Lawrence is good. Yes, the Jaguars probably have the best defensive line in the league. Yes, Calais Campbell is a really good defensive player. But all those guys, they are nothing compared to Von Miller. Even Bradley Chubb. Bradley Chubb is viewed as a generational talent. these guys are probably the best pass rushing duo in the NFL. And I am scared for Deshaun Watson's life. I think these guys will come after Deshaun Watson. So Kendall Lamb and Julian Davenport are about to have their hands full. And I am terrified of it. Hopefully O'Brien can scheme something up. Hopefully Deshaun throws the ball away quick. Hopefully the run game really gets going to the point where, you tire these guys out, because I don't want Deshaun taking hits and getting injured again. But, that's enough about the matchups. Now here are the keys to the game if the Texans want to win the game. Key number 1, protect Deshaun Watson. Again, how I was just saying, Bradley Chubb, Von Miller, they will come after Deshaun Watson. And Von Miller, he's looking for the ball. He's not just trying to sack Deshaun Watson. He is looking for the ball. So it's important that you protect Deshaun Watson. Don't let him get hit or any of that. The next key, sustain long, time-consuming drives. Why? Because if you do, that means the defense isn't out there on the field as long. And if they're not out there on the field as long, it means they won't get tired so quickly in that high altitude in Denver. And the final key, win the turnover battle. Deshaun Watson, if you want your team to win this game, you cannot turn the football over. I know these past 2 weeks he's done a great job of not turning it over. So the Texans on offense can't turn the ball over, and the Texans on defense have to get a couple turnovers off of Case Keenum, who fumbles the ball a lot, who throws a bunch of picks. The Texans defense has to get the ball back for the offense, mostly due to the fact that I don't think the defense can legitly, stop the Broncos offense, because at the moment they're banged up and it's just a bad matchup in general. So hopefully the Texans win the turnover battle, and if the Texans win the turnover battle, they have a chance. Now, my prediction for the game, I am going 38-34, Broncos win. Now, again, this is just a bad matchup for the Texans in my opinion. Without Zach Cunningham, I feel like Lindsley's going to be able to run all over the Texans. Without J-Joe, it's going to be even easier for the Broncos to pass the ball on us. I just don't like it. Deshaun's going to have to win a shootout. He can definitely do that, but the fact that the Broncos are at home, the fact that our defense will probably get tired way quicker, or will get tired way quicker if we have to get in a shootout, I just do not like this one bit. If you watched my prediction video for the season, this was always a game I thought we were going to lose. And I still see us losing this game in the shootout. So that's all I have for you guys today. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace.